Dexter Tyrone sighed tiredly as he parked his tattered Chevy Impala outside his small, one-story house in East Portland. The 12-hour shift at the aluminum plant had sucked all the energy out of him. Muscles ached, his back ached, and the smell of metal dust seemed to embed itself in his skin forever. The cold March rain followed him from the car to the porch, making him long even more for a hot shower and dinner. Opening the front door, Dexter immediately noticed the stack of letters on the floor. Among them stood out a familiar envelope stamped Multnomah County Correctional Facility. The 35-year-old man smiled, picked up the envelope, ignored the bills and flyers, and made his way inside the house, leaving wet footprints on the worn linoleum. Dexter had an invariable ritual when a letter from LaShonda arrived. First a shower, then dinner, and only then, with a cup of strong coffee, did he allow himself to savor the letter. 40 minutes later, changed into his homemade clothes, he was sitting at the kitchen table with a frozen lasagna warming up in the microwave. Dexter carefully opened the envelope and pulled out folded sheets scribbled in neat, small handwriting. "My sweet Dex, your letters are the only thing that keeps me warm in these cold walls. Sometimes I reread them before bed, and the images you paint with words replace my wildest fantasies." Dexter took a sip of coffee, feeling the warmth spill over his body. He read slowly, savoring every sentence, every intimate hint. LaShonda had never been shy about describing what she wanted to do to him when they finally met. "But the most important thing I want to tell you today, my Dex, is that the parole board has approved my release. In 2 weeks, on March 26th, I'll be out of here. 5 years, 3 months, and 14 days, and I'll be free again. I've waited so long for the moment when I could touch you, feel your breath on my neck, hear you say my name not in a letter but whisper it in my ear. Dex, I know this may seem too fast, but I have nowhere to go. My whole family turned their backs on me when I got here. I'd like to come stay with you, at least for a while until I get back on my feet. I promise I won't be a burden. I can cook, I can clean, I can be useful. And of course, I'll be grateful to you in all the ways we've written to each other all these months. I'm waiting for your reply and counting the days until we meet. Forever yours, LaShonda." Dexter reread the letter twice, especially the lines about his imminent release. A wave of joyous excitement swept over him. LaShonda Mercer, the woman he'd been corresponding with for the past 7 months, the woman he'd never seen in person but was in love with, would soon be free and wanted to come visit him. He put the letter aside and remembered how it had started. Almost a year ago, he'd stumbled across a prisoner hookup site. At the time, it had seemed like just a way to brighten his loneliness after breaking up with Sheila, his ex-girlfriend who had run off to California with a musician. Out of dozens of profiles, it was LaShonda who caught his eye. Something about her direct gaze in the photos hooked him. 36 years old, serving time for possession and distribution. Interested in psychology, writing poetry. Looking for a pen pal who won't judge me. The first letters were formal. They wrote about the weather, about books, about their interests. Gradually, the letters became more frank. LaShonda told him about her difficult childhood in a poor neighborhood in Portland, about losing her parents early, about her involvement with drug dealers. Dexter shared his story. Working in a factory from the age of 18, unfulfilled dreams of college, failures in his personal life. And then, after about 3 months of correspondence, the tone of their communication changed. LaShonda was the first to cross the line, writing that she often thought of him before bed. Dexter answered her in the same vein, and soon their letters turned into passionate messages of longing and desire. Tyrone took a deep breath. LaShonda is getting out in 2 weeks. She wants to come see him. It was something he'd been dreaming about for the past few months, but now a slight unease gripped him. Isn't this all happening too fast? After all, he hadn't even seen her in person once. All he had was a picture on a website, a few snapshots she'd sent, and her letters. But then he remembered how she'd described her feelings for him, how she'd thanked him for his support during her hard days in prison. The anxiety receded, replaced by determination. Dexter pulled a blank sheet of paper from his desk drawer and began writing a reply. Dear LaShonda, your letter brought me the best news I've gotten all year. I am so happy that you will soon be free, and of course you can come and visit me. My house is your home for as long as you need it. Dexter wrote quickly, without thinking, letting the words pour from his heart. He promised her support, care, talked about how he couldn't wait for them to meet, how he longed to finally see her smile, hear her voice, touch her hand. Dexter spent the next 2 days worrying. On Saturday, he sent a letter to LaShonda, and then went to the mall, where he spent a considerable sum on new linens, towels, and various toiletries. On Sunday, he set about a general cleaning of the house, which had long needed more attention. By Sunday evening, tired but satisfied, Dexter was sitting on the couch with a bottle of beer, going over his to-do list before LaShonda arrived. Clear out the bedroom closet, buy groceries she liked, maybe freshen up the paint in the bathroom. The ringing of the phone interrupted his musings. The name Quentin popped up on the screen. Dexter thought for a moment, but then answered it. "Hey, bro!" Quentin Rayford's voice sounded cheerful. "What's up? I was going to stop by your place today, but I got caught up in the moment. You home tomorrow night?" "Yeah, I'm at work until 5, then I'm home," Dexter answered. "But I've got a lot to do, so I'm not sure I can stay out too long." "Busy?" Quentin sounded surprised. "Since when did you get busy?" Dexter paused. Quentin had been his best friend since high school, but Dexter hadn't told him about his correspondence with LaShonda in recent months. Partly out of fear of judgment, partly wanting to keep that relationship just for himself. "You know, I'm having a visitor soon. I'm getting the house ready for her." "A guest?" Quentin is revitalized. "You finally started seeing someone? Why didn't you tell me? Who is she?" Dexter took a deep breath. Now that LaShonda was actually going to come to him, there was no point in hiding the relationship anymore. "It's a long story, Quint. Let me tell it tomorrow." "No, I won't sleep with curiosity now." Quentin laughed. "At least tell me where you met her." "We corresponded." "Texting? What, on the internet? You set up an account on a dating site?" "Not exactly." Dexter realized there was no point in delaying the moment of truth any longer. "We corresponded by regular mail. She's in prison, Quint. Well, she was in jail. She's getting out in 2 weeks and she's coming to see me." There was silence on the phone. Then Quentin spoke and his voice became strained. "Are you serious, Dex? You're having an affair with a prisoner? And now you're inviting her to live with you without even meeting her in person?" "We've known each other for 7 months," Dexter replied defensively. "We've written each other dozens of letters. I know her better than a lot of people I meet every day." "What was she in jail for?" Quentin asked bluntly. Dexter wrinkled his nose. It was an inevitable question, but it still made him feel uncomfortable. "For drug distribution. But that's in the past, Quint. She's changed. She wants to start a new life." "And you believe her?" Quentin sounded distrustful. "Dex, use your head. You only know this woman through her letters. She could have written you anything. How can you be sure she's truly remorseful? That she's not using you?" Dexter felt irritation building. He'd expected such a reaction, but he wasn't prepared for such open skepticism. "You know what, Quint? I thought you'd be happy for me. I finally met a woman who understands me, who makes me feel alive. Yes, she's made mistakes, but she paid for them in full. 5 years behind bars is no joke." "I'm just worried about you." Quentin's voice softened. "You're my friend, and I don't want you to get hurt, especially after the Sheila thing." Dexter tensed at the mention of an ex-girlfriend. Sheila had dumped him 2 years ago, and the wound still hadn't healed. "LaShonda is not Sheila," he said firmly. "And I'm not asking you to approve of my decisions. Just back me up, okay?" There was another pause in the receiver, and then Quentin sighed. "Okay, I'm sorry. Of course I'll support you. So you said her name is LaShonda? How old is she? What does she look like?" The tension eased, and Dexter was relieved to start telling his friend about LaShonda, about her sense of humor, about her dreams for the future. He didn't mention the intimate details of the correspondence, but even without them, it was clear that Dexter was deeply in love. "I'll stop by tomorrow," Quentin said. "And if you don't mind, I'd like to look at her pictures." "Sure," Dexter agreed, though deep down he knew that Quentin wanted to appreciate LaShonda, and that hurt him. "I'll see you tomorrow." Monday at the plant stretched on interminably. Dexter worked automatically, his thoughts far away from aluminum ingots and conveyor belts. He imagined LaShonda reading his letter, smiling when she knew he was waiting for her with open arms. By the end of his shift, Dexter felt exhausted but exhilarated. He took a quick shower in the factory locker room and hurried home, knowing that Quentin would be here soon. When he pulled up in front of the house, Quentin's shabby Ford Focus was already parked at the curb. Quentin himself was sitting on the porch, waiting for his friend. "I didn't think you'd be here so early," Dexter said, getting out of the car. Quentin got up. "Finished work early. Couldn't wait to find out more about your mysterious pen pal." You could still hear a note of skepticism in his voice, but he tried to be friendly. They entered the house, and Quentin noticed the change immediately. "You really cleaned up," he said, surprised. "I can't remember the last time I saw your house so clean." "I told you. I'm getting ready for LaShonda." Dexter went into the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. "You want a beer?" "Come on." Quentin followed him. "So when's she coming?" 26th, Dexter answered, pulling out 2 bottles. "I still have almost 2 weeks to get everything ready." "And she's going to live here?" Quentin accepted the bottle. "Yes, until she gets back on her feet. She's got nowhere to go. Her family turned their backs on her when she went to prison." Quentin frowned, but asked instead of commenting, "You said you had pictures of her?" Dexter nodded and pulled out of his desk drawer a small stack of pictures that LaShonda had sent him. Most of them showed her in prison clothes, but she was smiling into the cell with a warmth that made up for the harshness of the surroundings. Quentin scrutinized the pictures. LaShonda Mercer was a tall, slender woman with sharp cheekbones and large, expressive eyes. Her dark hair was cut short, emphasizing the beauty of her face. "She's beautiful," Quentin admitted, handing back the photos. "But Dex, I still think you should be careful. You don't know much about her past, except what she's told you." "I know enough," Dexter said stubbornly. "She made the mistake of falling under the influence of bad company. But she's a good, sincere person at heart. She wants to change her life, and I want to help her do it." Quentin looked at him doubtfully. "What if she's using you? What if she just needs a place to stay after she's released?" "I've thought about that," Dexter admitted. "But you haven't read her letters. You haven't seen how she opens up to me, how she shares her thoughts and feelings. It can't be an act." "I hope you're right." Quentin took a sip of his beer. "Just be careful, okay? Take your time. Get to know her better before you trust her completely." "Deal." Dexter smiled, glad his friend was at least trying to understand him. "Now that we've cleared that up, why don't you help me decide which paint to choose for the bathroom?" The next 2 weeks flew by like a day for Dexter. He wrote to LaShonda every 3 days, telling her about the preparations for her arrival, sharing plans for their future together. He received 2 more letters in response, thanking him for his support and telling him how much she couldn't wait to see him. During this time, Dexter completely transformed his home. He painted the walls in the bathroom and kitchen, bought a new couch for the living room, and replaced the curtains. Every night after work, he found a new job to do, fixing a leaky faucet, changing burned-out light bulbs, dusting hard-to-reach places. Quentin, who had visited him the week before LaShonda arrived, watched these changes with amazement. "It's like you're getting ready for the Queen," he joked, looking at the new towels in the bathroom. "I've never seen you so homely." Dexter only smiled back. He didn't recognize himself. Until a month ago, his house had been just a place where he slept and ate. Now it was becoming a cozy home, a place to live, not just exist. Dexter hadn't slept much the night before LaShonda's arrival. He'd checked and double-checked every detail, worried that he might have missed something. The refrigerator was full of groceries, the closet hung with the new clothes he'd bought for LaShonda, the vase of flowers on the bedside table. On the morning of March 26th, Dexter took the morning off work. LaShonda was due to be released around 10 in the morning, and he arranged to meet her outside the jail. He picked out the best of his shirts, new jeans, even bought new shoes. Nervous as a teenager before a first date, he left the house an hour before the appointed time, afraid of being late because of traffic. When Dexter pulled up to the Multnomah County Correctional Facility, his heart was pounding with incredible force. He parked in the visitors' parking lot and stayed waiting in the car, watching the main gate. At 10:15, the gate opened, and Dexter saw her. LaShonda Mercer walked slowly, as if getting used to the feeling of freedom, clutching a small duffel bag in her hands. She was wearing a simple black dress and a denim jacket, release clothes provided by the prison. Her hair had grown out since the last pictures and now framed her face in soft curls. Dexter jumped out of the car and froze, hesitant to approach. LaShonda stopped at the gate looking around, and he realized she was looking for him. Gathering his wits, he raised his hand and waved at her. Their gazes met across the parking lot, and LaShonda smiled, the same smile he'd seen so often in photographs. She headed toward him, and with every step she took, Dexter could feel his excitement growing. "Dexter?" she asked, stepping closer, and her voice, low, with a slight huskiness, made his skin goosebumps. "LaShonda," he breathed out, not believing the moment had finally arrived. "It's so good to see you." They stood across from each other, separated by only a few steps, but neither dared to shorten the distance. LaShonda studied his face, as if comparing it to the image she had formed from photographs and letters. "You're taller than I imagined," she said with a slight smile. "And you're exactly as I imagined," Dexter replied, his mouth drying with excitement. Finally, LaShonda stepped forward and held out her hand. "Why don't we just shake hands first? We're going to stand here all day looking at each other." A mischievous sparkle flickered in her eyes, and Dexter laughed, feeling the tension release. He took her hand in his, her skin cool and surprisingly soft. "How about we go home?" he suggested. "I've prepared everything for your arrival." "I'd love to see your home," LaShonda nodded, "especially after 5 years in a gray-walled institution." Dexter opened the passenger door, helping her into the car, then walked around the car and got behind the wheel. All the way home, they talked about little things, the weather, how Portland had changed in 5 years, what LaShonda wished she could do first in freedom. "You know what my biggest dream was?" she said, looking out the window at the city whizzing by. "A hot bath, a real bath, where you could lie in the bubble bath as long as you wanted, not thinking that in 5 minutes there would be a knock on the door demanding to vacate the premises." "I have a bathtub," Dexter smiled. "It's not too big, but it's decent, and I bought bubble bath. Different kinds, I didn't know which one you'd like." LaShonda turned to him, and there was something in her eyes that Dexter couldn't quite put his finger on, a mixture of surprise, gratitude, and something deeper and more complex. "You've really thought this through, haven't you?" she asked quietly. "I wanted you to feel at home," he answered simply. When they pulled up to Dexter's house, LaShonda got out of the car and stood for a while, looking at the small, one-story structure with the small, manicured garden in front of it. "It's really nice," she said finally. "A real house." Dexter led her inside, showing her his modest possessions, the kitchen, the living room, the bathroom, and finally the bedroom. "You'll sleep here," he said, opening the door to the bedroom, where there was a wide bed with new linens. "I'll move to the couch in the living room." "I can't do that." LaShonda shook her head. "It's your house, your bed. I can sleep on the couch." "Don't even think about it," Dexter said firmly. "You just got out of prison. You need comfort and peace. Besides, the couch isn't that uncomfortable." LaShonda was about to object, but then just nodded. "Thank you, Dex. Yeah, I really appreciate everything you do for me." They spent the evening talking. Dexter had made dinner. Nothing fancy, just steaks and mashed potatoes, but LaShonda ate with such gusto that it was the most exquisite meal in the world. "God, I've missed eating normal food," she said, putting another piece of meat in her mouth. "In prison, the food was edible, nothing more. This is delicious." It had been 3 weeks since LaShonda Mercer had stepped into Dexter Tyrone's house. During that time, their lives had taken on a distinct, established rhythm that both seemed to find comfortable. In the mornings, Dexter would leave for the factory, leaving LaShonda alone in the house. She would prepare dinner for his return, keep it clean and organized, and in her spare time read the books he bought for her or watch television. In the evenings, they talked about everything in the world: books, movies, life. LaShonda talked about her childhood in a poor neighborhood in Portland, about how hard it was to be a dark-skinned girl in a world where danger and temptation awaited at every corner. Dexter shared stories about his family, about his job, about his unfulfilled dreams of becoming an engineer. And at night, Dexter stopped to think about the fact that he was sleeping on the uncomfortable couch in the living room. Within a week of LaShonda's arrival, Their relationship had grown into more than just friendship. The first kiss had happened when she'd handed him a cup of coffee in the morning before work, holding her hand in his palm a little longer than necessary. Dexter didn't realize how it happened. One second he was staring into her eyes. The next, his lips were touching hers. That evening, when he returned from work, he found that LaShonda had moved things into the bedroom. Their bedroom. The couch in the living room had been empty ever since. For Dexter, it was a time of incredible happiness. For the first time in years, he felt truly alive, needed, loved. Every day he hurried home from work, knowing he was welcome there. Quentin, noticing this change, once joked that Dexter seemed to have shed a dozen years from his shoulders and become younger before his eyes. Quentin was the only one who visited them regularly. Despite his initial misgivings, he tried to give LaShonda a chance, though Dexter noticed that his friend was still wary and often watched her with barely concealed suspicion. When they were alone together, Quentin occasionally returned to the subject of LaShonda's past, but Dexter invariably cut the conversation short. "Why can't you just be happy for me?" he asked Quentin one day, when they were standing on the porch after another dinner together, and LaShonda was cleaning up the dishes in the kitchen. "You can see that I'm happy." Quentin glanced out the window at LaShonda's silhouette and lowered his voice. "I'm trying, bro. I really am. But what do we really know about her? Just what she told us. You don't find it odd that she never talks about her cellmates? The prison guards? How her trial really went? She tells you these sob stories about her troubled childhood, but not a word about how she got involved in the drug business. Who were her accomplices? Who she was working with? It hurts her to talk about it," Dexter said defensively. "She's trying to put the past behind her, a clean slate." "Or she's hiding something," Quentin continued stubbornly. "I just want you to be careful, Dex. Don't turn your brain off because of a beautiful smile and a hot body." Dexter felt the anger boiling up inside him. "You're out of line, Quent. I appreciate your concern, but you're talking about the woman I love." "Love?" Quentin raised his eyebrows. "You've only known her for a month in real life, but you've been corresponding with her for almost a year. I know her, Quent, and I'm asking you to respect my choices." Quentin raised his hands in a conciliatory gesture. Okay, I'm just concerned, that's all. But you're right, it's your life and your choice." After that conversation, Quentin came less often, and Dexter and LaShonda were practically alone, except for occasional visits from neighbors. Especially Tamika Pruitt, the elderly woman across the street, who dropped by from time to borrow sugar or flour, but really to quench her curiosity about the new resident of their quiet neighborhood. "She looks at me like I'm about to steal silver spoons," LaShonda complained one day after another visit from Tamika. "I feel like an exhibit in a museum under her gaze." Dexter put his arm around her, kissing the top of her head. "Don't mind her. She's just an old gossip who watches too much crime news. She's got nothing better to do than poke her nose into other people's business." "Maybe," LaShonda said, but Dexter could hear the worry in her voice. "I just feel like she's watching me on purpose. Yesterday, when I went out to the store, she happened to be outside pruning her roses, and when I came back, she was still there even though over an hour had passed." "Do you want me to talk to her?" Dexter suggested it. "Tell her to leave us alone?" "No, I don't think so," LaShonda replied quickly. "I don't want to cause trouble. I'm used to people looking at me with suspicion. It's just a little stressful." Dexter pulled her tighter against him, feeling how much he wanted to protect this woman from the world that seemed to be just waiting to remind her of her past mistakes. Spring was in full swing in Portland when Dexter first noticed the changes in LaShonda's demeanor. They were subtle. She started checking the cell phone he'd bought her shortly after her arrival more often, sometimes went out on the porch to talk to someone, and when he asked who she was talking to, she answered evasively, "Just an acquaintance from prison," or "a parole counselor." One day, returning from work earlier than usual because of an equipment breakdown at the plant, Dexter found LaShonda hurriedly finishing up some phone call. When he entered the house, she stopped abruptly and smiled nervously. "You're early today," she said, her voice filled with surprise, but not the joy Dexter was used to seeing when he came home. "Yeah, one of the presses broke down at the plant and they let us go," he replied, kissing her cheek. "Who were you talking to?" "Oh, it's It's Taisha. Lashonda looked away. She and I were in the same cell. She just got out too, got a job at the supermarket. Talked to me about the rent. Dexter nodded, but something in her tone made him feel a twinge of unease. He quickly pushed the thought away, though. Quentin and his suspicions have infected me too, he thought. But a couple of days later, something happened that made him think seriously. Returning home at the usual time, he noticed an unfamiliar car parked in front of his house, a black sedan with tinted windows. As soon as he pulled up in front of the house and got out of his Chevy, the sedan touched down and slowly pulled away. Dexter frowned as he watched the car drive away, but then shrugged. There was no telling who might be visiting the neighbors. When he entered the house, however, he immediately sensed a strange atmosphere. Lashonda was in the kitchen, preparing dinner, but her movement seemed nervous, even fidgety. "Did we have guests?" Dexter asked, taking off his work jacket. Lashonda froze for a moment, then turned to him with a smile that seemed too strained. "No, what makes you think that?" "Saw a black car in front of the house," Dexter explained. "It was gone as soon as I pulled up." "Ah," Lashonda shrugged, going back to chopping vegetables. "I have no idea. Maybe someone was visiting Tamika." "Maybe," Dexter agreed, though his gut told him that Lashonda wasn't telling the whole truth. "What are we having for dinner?" "Roast vegetables," she said, clearly pleased at the change of subject. "And I baked your favorite apple pie for dessert." Dinner went pretty much as usual, but Dexter couldn't shake the feeling that something was different. Lashonda was too animated, talking too much about nothing, barely letting him get a word in edgewise. It was as if she was afraid he would return to the subject of the mysterious machine. That night, as they lay in bed and Lashonda was almost asleep, Dexter asked cautiously, "Are you happy with me, Lashonda?" She turned to him, her eyes glistening in the darkness. "Of course, Dex. You're the best thing that's happened in my life. Why do you ask?" "Just wanted to make sure." He pulled her closer to him. "If you need anything, if something's bothering you, you can always tell me. I want you to know that." "I know," she whispered, and kissed him. "And there's nothing wrong with me. I really am." Dexter allowed himself to believe her. After all, they were doing fine, better than he could have dreamed. Why look for trouble where there was none? But a week later, the problems found him on their own. On Thursday, April 16th, Dexter Tyrone returned home after a particularly hard shift at the factory. His back ached from having to fill in for an absent coworker and lugging heavy boxes of parts. All he could think about was a hot shower, dinner, and maybe a massage from Lashonda, who was surprisingly good at relieving his tired muscles. He opened the door of the house and immediately heard voices from the living room, male and female. Lashonda's voice he recognized immediately, but the male one was unfamiliar to him. Walking into the living room, Dexter froze on the threshold, looking at the unexpected scene. Lashonda was sitting on the couch next to a tall, muscular, dark-skinned man in his 40s. He had a short haircut, a neat beard, and a hard stare that instantly focused on Dexter. The man was wearing an expensive shirt and pants, and a gold watch gleamed on his wrist. "Dex!" Lashonda jumped up from the couch, her smile seeming too wide, unnatural. "You're back. Meet Malik. Malik Duval, an old friend of mine. Malik, this is Dexter. I told you about him." Malik rose lazily from the couch and held out his hand. "Nice to meet you, brother. Lashonda's told me a lot about you." Dexter shook the outstretched hand, feeling an uneasy feeling grow inside him. Malik's handshake was strong, almost painful, and his eyes studied Dexter appraisingly, as if calculating his worth. "Malik was passing through Portland on business and decided to visit me," Lashonda explained quickly. "We're old friends, from when I lived in North Portland." "Yeah, Shawnee and I have known each other forever," Malik confirmed, and Dexter noted the unfamiliar nickname. "When I heard she'd gotten out and settled here, I thought I'd stop by, make sure she was okay." Dexter nodded slowly, trying to comprehend the situation. Lashonda had never mentioned a friend named Malik. Not in letters, not in conversations over the past month. "I was just about to start making dinner." Lashonda was clearly nervous, shifting her gaze from Dexter to Malik and back again. "Malik, you're staying, aren't you?" "I'd love to," He nodded. If it's okay with your man, of course. He looked at Dexter again, and there was something like a challenge in his gaze. Of course I don't mind, Dexter replied, though what he really wanted was for the intruder to leave as soon as possible. Any friend of LaShonda's is a friend of mine. The dinner passed in a strange, tense atmosphere as Malik told stories of his travels across the country, of his business importing exotic spices, of the expensive restaurants and clubs he frequented. Dexter could see LaShonda's eyes light up when Malik talked about places she'd never been, things she'd never had. What do you do, Dexter? Malik asked as they moved on to dessert. I work at an aluminum plant, Dexter replied. A press operator. Really? Malik raised his eyebrows. How long have you been there? 16 years. And you plan to keep going? The work is steady. The pay's good. Dexter was starting to feel annoyed. Not everyone has to travel all over the country to feel successful. Malik laughed. Sure, brother, sure. To each his own. It's just, with a woman like Shawnee, I'd like to give her the best. She deserves it. Dexter noticed LaShonda blush slightly and lower her eyes. Something in that gesture, in that reaction to Malik's words, hit him deeper than he could have expected. After dinner, LaShonda began clearing the table, and Malik motioned for Dexter to go out on the porch to get some air. They stood in the evening twilight, silently smoking the cigarettes Malik had offered. You know who I really am, don't you? Malik asked, suddenly, not looking at Dexter. A friend of LaShonda's, Dexter answered cautiously. Malik grinned. Yes, a friend. You could say that. Look, Dexter, I appreciate what you've done for Shawnee. I really do. Not every man would accept a woman with her past. He paused, taking a drag. There are things you're better off not knowing, and questions you're better off not asking. You know what I mean? Dexter felt a chill run down his spine. I'm not sure I do. You do. Malik turned to him, and Dexter saw something in his eyes that made him uncomfortable. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Shawnee's important to me, and I wouldn't want her to get in trouble. Before Dexter could answer, the door opened, and LaShonda came out onto the porch. She asked, glancing from one man to the other. Everything's fine, baby. Malik smiled broadly. We're just talking. Man talk. Is Malik leaving already? Dexter heard a note of hope in LaShonda's voice, and it reassured him a little. Yeah, I gotta go. Malik nodded, putting out his cigarette. I've got things to do in town, but I'll stop by one of these days and check on you. He hugged LaShonda goodbye, and it seemed to Dexter that the hug lasted a little longer than it should have for ordinary friends. Then Malik shook Dexter's hand, squeezing it again a little harder than necessary. It was nice to meet you, brother, he said. Take care of our girl. As Malik's black sedan disappeared around the corner, Dexter turned to LaShonda. You never told me about him. LaShonda avoided his gaze. There was no reason to. Malik and I have known each other for a long time, even before I got into trouble. He's one of the few people who hasn't turned his back on me. And he knew where to find you? Dexter couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't being told the whole truth. I gave him your address when we talked on the phone last week, LaShonda admitted. He called to see how I was doing. I didn't think he was really coming. Was that his car I saw last week? Dexter remembered the black sedan driving away as soon as he pulled up in front of the house. LaShonda hesitated, then nodded. Yes. He stopped by for a little while. I didn't want to tell you because... She paused, searching for words. Because I was afraid you'd be jealous or start asking questions about my past, and I want to put it all behind me so badly. Dexter came to her and put his arms around her. You can tell me anything, LaShonda. I won't judge you no matter what happened in the past. I know, she whispered, resting her face against his shoulder. It's just, some things are hard to explain, and I'm afraid that if you knew the whole truth, you'd stop looking at me the way you do now. Never, Dexter said firmly, though somewhere deep inside him there was a twinge of doubt. Let's go inside. It's getting cold. Dexter lay awake that night, listening to LaShonda's steady breathing beside him. He couldn't get Malik's words out of his head, and neither could LaShonda's strange reaction to his appearance. Questions best not asked, Malik said. What could that possibly mean, and why had LaShonda kept this man's visit from him? Finally, exhausted by these thoughts, Dexter fell into a restless sleep. Dexter awoke the next morning with a heavy heart. Something told him that Malik's visit had changed everything, disrupted the fragile happiness he and LaShonda had built over the past month. He watched her prepare breakfast, moving through the kitchen with her usual grace, and tried to push the gloomy thoughts away. "You're quiet today," LaShonda observed, setting a plate of scrambled eggs and bacon in front of him. "Is everything all right?" "Yeah, just thinking about things." Dexter tried to smile. "Malik, is he really just a friend of yours?" LaShonda froze, then sat down across from him. "What do you mean? He calls you Shawnee." Dexter looked her straight in the eye. "And the way he talked about you, the way he looked at you, it doesn't sound like a simple friendship." LaShonda sighed. "Malik is a complicated man. Yes, there was a time when we were more than friends, but that's long in the past, Dex. I have you now, and that's all that matters." Dexter wanted to believe her. He really did, but something in her eyes, some shadow that flashed when she spoke of Malik, made him doubt it. "Is he connected to your past? To what you were in prison for?" LaShonda looked away. "Dex, please. I don't want to talk about it. Not now." "When, LaShonda?" Dexter insisted. "You always walk away from this conversation. I've accepted you with all your past, but I don't even know what I've accepted. You never give details about how you got into prison, who your accomplices were, how you got into the drug business in the first place. Do you need to know?" I could hear the irritation in her voice. "What does it matter how I got it wrong? What matters is that I've paid for my mistakes, and I want to start a new life. With you." Dexter sighed, realizing he was back against the wall. "Okay, I won't push. But promise me that if this Malik guy shows up again, you'll tell me. I don't want to come home and find unexpected guests again." "I promise." LaShonda nodded and reached across the table to squeeze his hand. "I love you, Dex. I really do." Dexter squeezed her palm in return, wanting with all his heart to believe those words. The next 2 weeks passed relatively quietly. Malik never showed up again, though LaShonda admitted he'd called her a couple times. Dexter tried not to pry into the details of those conversations, though he noticed that LaShonda always seemed thoughtful and a little distant afterward. On Monday, Dexter went to work as usual, leaving LaShonda to do the housework. It had been a particularly rough day at the factory. One of the machines kept malfunctioning, and they had to stop the production line several times for repairs. By the end of the shift, Dexter felt drained and dreamed only of a hot shower and dinner. As he drove up to the house, he immediately noticed Malik's familiar black sedan parked just off the driveway. Dexter's heart clenched painfully. LaShonda had promised to warn him if Malik showed up again, but she hadn't. Dexter parked his Chevy nearby and just sat there for a while, trying to gather his thoughts. Maybe she had a reason for not telling me, he thought, though an inner voice was already whispering to him that something was wrong. Getting out of the car, Dexter noticed that the curtains in the living room were drawn, though LaShonda usually kept them open until sundown. He walked slowly to the door, slid the key into the lock, and took a deep breath before entering the house. The hallway was quiet, but there were muffled voices coming from the living room. Dexter walked down the hallway, trying to tread as quietly as possible. The door to the living room was ajar, and through the crack, he saw LaShonda and Malik sitting on the couch with their backs to him. They were talking quietly about something, leaning over the coffee table. Dexter pushed open the door and froze on the threshold. On the table in front of LaShonda and Malik were several plastic bags of white powder, a small scale, and stacks of cash. They both turned sharply toward him, and the same look of consternation flashed across their faces, which was quickly replaced by other emotions, guilt on LaShonda's face and cold calculation on Malik's. "Dex," LaShonda began, rising from the couch. "I can explain." Dexter shifted his gaze from her to the drugs and back again, feeling something crumble inside him. "What is it?" he asked, even though he knew the answer. "What's going on, LaShonda?" "It's not what you think." She took a step toward him, but Malik put a hand on her shoulder, stopping her. "It's okay, Shawnee," he said calmly. He was bound to find out sooner or later. Malik turned to Dexter. "As you can see, brother, we've got a little business here. Nothing big, just getting Shawnee back on the path she knows best." "Drugs?" Dexter felt a wave of anger wash over him. "After everything that's happened? After you did 5 years for it?" LaShonda lowered her eyes. I need money, Dex. Real money. I can't live like this. Like this. Not after everything I've been through. I thought you wanted to start a new life. Dexter took a step forward, his voice shaking with restrained emotion. I thought you wanted to be with me? I did. Tears glistened in her eyes. I really did. But then Malik came along and she remembered who she really was. Malik finished for her, standing up. Don't take it personally, brother. Shawnee just wasn't cut out for the kind of life you can offer her. She's always wanted more. Dexter felt the ground go from under his feet. Everything he'd believed in for the past few months, everything he and LaShonda had built together, was a lie. I'm calling the police, he said firmly, pulling his cell phone out of his pocket. It's over, LaShonda. I'm not going to let you ruin your life again, nor mine. LaShonda's eyes widened with fear. Dex, no, you can't do this. Malik quickly stepped forward. Look, brother, let's discuss this like adults. No one wants problems. There's already trouble. Dexter unlocked his phone. You're dealing drugs in my house. I'm not going to be an accessory. It all happened in a matter of seconds. Malik lunged toward him, trying to snatch the phone, but Dexter pushed him away. The next instant, he saw LaShonda grab a heavy glass ashtray off the table. There was rage and desperation in her eyes. LaShonda, don't! Dexter shouted, instinctively raising his hand for protection. But it was too late. The ashtray came down on his head with force. Dexter felt an explosion of pain. His eyes went black, and he fell to his knees. Through the shroud of pain, he heard LaShonda's frightened cry. Oh my God, what have I done? Shut up and help me! Malik replied sharply. He was still conscious. Dexter tried to get up when he felt a second blow, even harder than the first. He fell to the floor, feeling something warm running down his face. Through the fog in his head, he saw LaShonda and Malik quickly picking up drugs and money from the table. We have to get out of here, Malik was saying. Now! We can't leave him like this! LaShonda's voice was shaking. We have to call an ambulance. Are you out of your mind? Malik grabbed her by the shoulders. That's a third term for you. Life, Shawnee. We're leaving. Now. Dexter tried to say something, but only a faint croak escaped his throat. He saw LaShonda looking at him, and something flashed in her eyes. Regret? Remorse? But then she nodded to Malik and turned away quickly. The last thing Dexter saw was LaShonda, the woman he loved, the woman he trusted with his heart and home, stepping over him, heading for the exit. She didn't even look back, lying on the floor of his house, feeling the life slowly leaving him. Dexter Tyrone thought about how blind he had been. Quentin had been right all along. He believed in a fairy tale, a beautiful story of a repentant woman seeking redemption. He believed in a love that never existed. Darkness was coming from all sides, and in his last moments of consciousness, Dexter remembered LaShonda's first letter, those warm, reassuring words that had made him believe he'd finally found his soulmate. How easily she had deceived him, how easy it was to believe what he so desperately wanted to hear. She never loved me, Dexter thought, feeling the tears mix with the blood on his face. It was his last thought before the darkness finally consumed him.